Welcome to the Achieve Anything Show, brought to you by Strive and today's host, Xander Woodford Smith.
Welcome, Strivers. My word, do we have a special episode for you today on how to change yourself. Now, I'll say right up front, if you're looking for 5 quick tips, this is not the video for you. We're going to go deep into neuroscience, biology, physiology, but it's truly going to be the main video about what it really takes to change yourself, okay? So just giving you that warning up front that this is for advanced people who are really interested in making true transformation and change, not just looking for a few quick fixes, okay? You'll get more benefit watching another video. There's some great content out there. Watch that instead. But if you really want to know how to change yourself, then this is absolutely the best 10-15 minutes that you could spend in understanding this, because you're going to have a completely different understanding by the end of it. I'm going to show you actually how the self is constructed, why that's so important, what's the number one mechanism you then need in order to reconstruct that self, in order to change it properly, and then what are the best things you can do within that number one strategy to make those changes as fast as possible. Okay, so I hope you're excited for it. Now, first thing I want to say, just before we get into the advanced stuff, is that congratulations. I just want to honor you for watching an episode or listening to a podcast that's called How to Change Yourself, because that shows me you've got the number one quality that you need if you want to change anything in your life, and that's ownership. You're realizing that it's not some tactic or something else that needs to come from outside of you. It's something that's got to change from within. That's really what we focus on at Strive, and especially within our advanced StriveX program. So congratulations for doing that. Now, let's get started. So if you want to know how to change the self, what you see a lot of times in other videos, if I can give the metaphor, is they're trying to tell you how to go from one room in a house or building to another room. Okay, so it is a change, but it's not that much of a shift or change in terms of what we're going to show you today, which is actually how you go up a floor. And it's the difference between vertical development and horizontal learning. Because once you actually go up a floor in terms of truly changing yourself, it changes the way you see obstacles, challenges, and other things that blocked what you wanted to do at the previous level, at the previous floor, because now you can see above them. You can see above the walls that you were previously blocking you, okay? So that's why we're focused on vertical development here today. But before we do any of that, we need to understand how the self is constructed, because if you want to change anything, you need to understand that first of all. So the person who, in my opinion, has the best forward thinking on this is the researcher Antonio Damasio. And so the way he explains how the self is actually constructed is there's 2 aspects to it. First of all, there's a temporal aspect. So we kind of know who we are by what happens to us, because it happens in a sequence. So it's like this, then this, then this. We were a child, then we were an adult, then we had this experience and this experience. And that helps create one layer of the self. But then there's a second layer, which is to do with the emotional coding that happens in our life. So we have a significant event happens, we attach a certain meaning, a certain focus that we assign to that event. And what is so important about this is that that emotional encoding is actually more important and has a bigger impact than the temporal encoding in terms of constructing the self. And I'll explain why this is the way the self is truly constructed in a second. So the emotions are absolutely key, and they can actually throw off the temporal encoding. So we actually think something happened one way, but it happened a completely different way. It's just the way we've encoded it. We had such strong emotions that it changes how we think about it and how we construct our personal narrative, because the emotions are so strong and it's overridden the temporal truth or reality of it, okay? So why does the emotion create the self? Well, it's because in order to create the self, you need something that is consistent. Like when you go to sleep for 8 hours, when you wake up again, how on earth are you suddenly the person you are? How are you, Dan or Elaine or Gary or Dean or Frank or whoever you are? how does that happen? What you need is, you need something consistent that your brain can kind of reference back. And one thing that's very consistent with that is always with us is our body and the homeostasis within it. Because if we deviate too far from where we are in terms of our homeostasis, what happens is we get disease or illness or death. So we stay in a pretty narrow aspect, and our emotions are just the underpinning of what that homeostasis is. So just like when you're walking around in the world, okay, you'll see an object like a door, okay? And so you can look at the door and certain neurons will fire to make you realize, oh, the vertical lines at the side and the top, that's about 7 feet with that. Oh, that's a door. I remember that. That's a door. So the neurons fire and you can get an object that's a door. All that happens is when you're creating the self is the neurons fire based on the maps of the emotions within your body. If that makes sense. And then all of the maps are generated from that. So just how you can create the view of a door, your brain has got used to knowing what the internal stasis is of your body, which comes from your emotions, and that creates a sense of self, and then all other representations and maps come from that, of like your meaning of life, your purpose, your values, what a door looks like, everything. So then how the hell do you change that? Okay, well, if the you can't go back and change your history, that's past. You can't go right and change the temporal, but the emotions have been encoded, and a lot of them are encoded subconsciously. And a lot of them before we even had like real true consciousness when we were younger as a child as well, but even throughout our life, okay? But then they drive how we feel about ourselves, the identity we take on, the ambitions we have, the goals we think we can achieve, the fears we have, the self-doubt we have, the self-loathing, the feeling of not being good enough, the feeling that we're alone, that we're not worthy of love, has come from that emotional coding. And so the way to start changing yourself is you have to be able to get objectivity about the emotional coding that you've put in and reconstruct that narrative. That's truly changing the self. Now you say, how the hell do I do that? The process that helps do that the most is through vertical development. Because vertical development, what it does is it helps you objectify more subtle phenomena. So kids, for example, they can't really think about their own thinking. Everything in their world is concrete, okay? So now I'm going to use the framework by one of my mentors, Terry O'Fallon, who's an expert on maturity, who hopefully we'll have on the show in a few weeks to discuss this in more detail. But I'm going to use her framework as a model, but simplified down massively. So when you're a child and when you're growing up, you only really deal with concrete objects, very physical things you can touch. Then you go through what's called a tier change, and you actually start to be able to be aware of more subtle phenomena. So you can start to think about your own thinking. And this is where you start to get expertise. And then later you get to have even more subtlety where you can actually have a feeling about your own feelings. So have you ever been like annoyed that you're frustrated, or like annoyed that you're sad, or like something where you feel a feeling about a particular feeling? You feel bad about feeling happy about some situation or whatever it is. So you get to have more subtlety. Then as you go higher in your vertical development, what happens is you start to see the context with what creates that emotional encoding. And when you get really high, you see the constructs. So you understand, oh, the reason I feel this way and have this desire is because of this, this, this. And you get much faster at doing it. And that allows you to rewire and recreate your personal narrative. Because you've gone from the first floor where before you just had the emotion of the particular event. And now you've gone to the second floor where you can actually start to understand, oh, well, I was just in that room at that particular time. That's why I felt that way. And then you go up a third floor and you go, oh, okay, and now I see it a completely different way. You get so much more objectivity about how you are constructing yourself. So first you understand how society is creating certain the context for you feeling a certain way. Then you understand how perhaps the way your parents raised you or your social influences have created that. And then you start to actually see through how yourself is constructing those. So what are the emotions that are already encoded that are now making you encode yourself in a certain way? Now, I hope this isn't getting too far, but basically you're getting more and more ability to play with and rework, like Play-Doh, more subtle phenomena until you get to a point where you can start to see through and reconstruct your identity. And that is truly vertical development. Now that takes getting to a certain level. Now most strivers that we've measured are at about a 4.0, a 4.5, and a true big shift is at the 5.0 level, and I'll go into that more in other episodes. But once you take that leap up into 5.0, you get to have new ability to construct who you are. At 4.0 and 4.5, you're starting to see through it, and that's probably why you're watching a video like this and have stuck around this long. You're starting to see through the conditioning that people around you have created in you, and that you're now starting to see through why you think certain ways, why you feel certain ways, and you're starting to have some ability to change it. Now, how do you vertically develop? Okay, well, one of the biggest and best ways that they've seen a fast way of doing it is through meditation. Because meditation, if you want to change anything and evolve anything, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to be able to differentiate aspects. There's something new that's got to emerge, then you've got to be able to differentiate them and then integrate them. And the reason meditation is so good is it allows you actually just to stop and start to see what thoughts and what constructs are emerging, and then you can start to differentiate them and start to make some choices. So meditation is a great one. But in order to accelerate that vertical development, what is so powerful is knowing the particular level that you're at. And you can look at it in terms of values, in terms of maturity, in terms of moral development. The one we use at Strive is the stages model created by Terry O'Fallon, because in ours it's the most robust, well-researched, and also we've got access to the person who created it. So that really helps us understand it at a truly deep level. So you've got to understand the level you're at, and then you've got to understand what the next level is, because then you get a sense of what the journey is. Otherwise, it's like trying to, bake a chocolate cake when you've never tasted it and you've not got a recipe, okay, and you don't know what the ingredients are. So having an understanding of what level you're at, what the next level is, and what that transition is between them. Now, in our StriveX program, we go into specific, like, what are the transformations, what are each level look like so you can identify it, and what are the transformations between each one, because there's specific things you can do, because between each level there's different things you focus on. So at the 3.0 level, you're very receptive in terms of what you're taking in, but at the 3.5 level you're much more active in terms of the goals you're trying to achieve. And then at the 4.0 level you kind of shift to a much more collective focus, and you're much more reciprocal in terms of what you're trying to do. And at 4.5 you're trying to build a system for understanding how all these constructs, contexts fit together. So depending on whether you're going to 3.0 to 3.5 or 4.0 to 4.5 or whatever, it changes what intervention you need in order to truly change yourself. But the main takeaway is, in your personal growth, you want to be focused on vertical development to truly change yourself, because that's what's going to allow you to get more objectivity about the emotions that are creating your personal narrative, that are affecting how you construct who you think you are. And you can start to rework them until you can become anybody you want to be. You can become who you want to be so you can achieve the things you want to achieve. And so that's really how to change yourself. Okay, so the self is constructed from temporal and emotional constructs that are an internal view of your body, okay, and the homeostasis that's in it. The most important one is the emotions. So you've got to be able to get some awareness of those emotions. The way you get greater awareness and objectivity is through vertical development. One of the best ways to go from any level within vertical development is through meditation, because the process of any change is emergence, differentiation and integration, and meditation helps with the awareness and emergence of those new phenomena. You're seeing what current level you are. The way to truly accelerate vertical development is to understand what level you're at, understand what the next level is, and understand what that transition looks like. So you start to get around people who've done that journey and who can guide you and saying, okay, this is what you can expect, this is what your focus should be on, and that will help you truly change yourself and the way, the context in which you show up and the way you construct your own identity. I hope that made sense. I hope that is a different view from what you've heard. I understand it's not like 5 quick tips, but if you truly want to change, that's what it takes. It's not just going into a different room. Otherwise, you're just at the same level and you've still got the same constructs. You don't actually see through anything. You don't actually truly change yourself. If you've got any questions, comment below or send me a message in the live chat on the Strivers website. I'd be happy to explain more, and so that you can start your own vertical development journey. If you really want to accelerate it, check out our StriveX program. You know, it's a new month right now. It's the 1st of April. It's a new quarter. Ask yourself, what is going to be the thing that helps you truly change yourself in the next 90 days? You know, this month or this year. Are you going to truly change yourself, or are you just going to keep adding different skills and abilities rather than truly transforming what you're capable of and your consciousness? So we'd love to see you as part of the StriveX program. If not, keep tuning into these shows and we'll dive more, especially when we get other guests. Comment below, visit the strivers.com website, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll look forward to chatting to you again next week. Until then, keep on striving.
Thank you for listening to the Achieve Anything Show, brought to you by Strive. Be sure to visit strivers.com to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover other fantastic bonus content that's only available on the website.